cloud. So, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Donald.
Mr. Alf Allen. It's
Yep.
been many years, hasn't it? I believe.
Yeah, 40 something.
40 something years, absolutely. So it's just fantastic to invite you to the Forgotten Generation interview to participate in a little bit of history, so we say. So
Yep.
I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask you, and then you can just let loose and say as much as you want, as little as you want, and we just go forward and talk about life. How about that?
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to start with where were you born, town and country?
Born Grange Hill, which is just outside Sablamar, which is part of Westmoreland on the west coast of Jamaica in 1957.
Wow. Well, sounds idyllic, sir. And were you ever separated from your parents?
Separated from the parents at the age of, Dad came over in 1959. So I was 2 years old when he came across. Mum arrived, I think it was about 6 months or so afterwards. So I was with my grandparents from probably about 1960 till 1963 when I arrived. I wasn't the youngest child and I wasn't the oldest child, and I've suffered ever since.
So you weren't the youngest and you weren't the oldest. So how many siblings have you got then?
I've got 6 in total. One was born in England in 1963, that's Jean. The other 5, including me, was born in Jamaica. So it caused havoc. It caused absolute havoc, right? You know. Anyway, that's another story.
Indeed. So you
Yeah.
were separated from your family and you reunited sort of, I guess, however many years in between. What was it like when you reunited again with your parents?
It was great, and it's also rather bizarre because I arrived, 63 was also when Kennedy was assassinated. I was on the seas for 24 days.
You actually arrived by sea?
I arrived by sea, right?
Wow.
You know, 24 days by myself under the stewardship of the captain. Right, you know, and because as a kid and even now, I really have got no fear.
So how old were you then?
I was 6.
It's amazing.
Yeah, in these, well, in today's world, it would be classified like as cruelty, but to me, it was just an adventure.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
and at the end of the adventure is my parents. What's the
Yes.
challenge? What's the challenge?
So what was the experience like on board ship? As a young
Brilliant.
16?
I met, I was with a US soldier that dropped off in, I think it's Washington, but it docked before it then went on to England. And I believe it's a Portsmouth, like say wherever. But no, it was great. It was absolutely great. It was just a journey to my mum and dad.
And where did you arrive in England?
Portsmouth, I think.
That's amazing. I mean, you know, I talk to a lot of people, but everybody else seems to have arrived. Well, almost everybody else seems to have arrived by plane. So I just wondered why the choice to.
I don't know. Well, I had no influence regarding the choice, and I don't know what the options were in 63, right? And yeah, look, you're asking me questions that people have never asked me. Not even my own family have asked me questions like that. But
this is what the Forgotten Generation is all about. You know, dig it out and share the experience with the world.
Absolutely.
You know, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, there's no
Wow.
fear, there's no issue. I mean, to me, what was the problem? What's the big deal? Yeah.
So when you met up with mommy and daddy again, did you feel that sort of immediate connection?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Really?
Well, it's an oddity because when I was young, um, when dad came home from work, I was always the first one to meet him.
Right.
Okay. Right. By the gates, you know, it was me there waiting for dad, right, to arrive on his bike because he was an electrician, you see. And mum's just mum. So when I came over, 27 High Week Road in Tottenham, South Tottenham, is the house that we used to live at. And the first thing, there was some interesting incidents. The first was the introduction to fog. Okay.
Yes.
Because there was significant issues in London at the time. And mum took me to the front door to introduce me, right? So opened the door, right? A kid, 6 years old, never seen fog or anything like that before, right? Opened the door, couldn't see anything. I stretched out my hand, right? And it seemed to me as if my hand was disappearing, and I dragged it back. Right? You know, it was just, it really was an absolute shock.
So what, I guess it was this winter, I suppose?
It was winter because I arrived October 63.
Yes. And I guess I can remember in those days, winter was winter, right? Proper winter.
It was more than winter, right? You know, because it was, when they talk about winter now, it bears no resemblance to winter back in the early 60s because they were still burning coal, and the ban on open fires in London hadn't kicked in yet. It really was dire. Yeah.
Yes, because I think what you were talking about, there were similar things that they have in other, especially a bigger city, where you had, they were burning the coal and the coke, and because the actual, it couldn't dissipate, it came back down, and people couldn't see where they were going.
Yeah, that's the backdraft, right? You know, so what happens is that when you light an open fire, if you haven't managed the airflow correctly, right, you know, in terms of sealing as much of the doors and windows as possible, leaving a minor vent open, then what you get is the flow of the air. If you've got too many items open and the outside pressure then kicks in, it comes all the way down the chimney right into the room. Remember it well.
So, so you came here at 6 and obviously went to school and all of that sort of thing. What was that like?
Brilliant. I was 2 years ahead, right? I did a painting that the headmaster couldn't believe, right? So we had it framed and it was in his office.
All right.
Right, you know, yeah, it wasn't a case of catching up. It was more a case of toning down. There's a couple of my life revolved around 2 incidents, or 2 main incidents. One was my parents had a Westlock clock, I think it is, and they threw it out when it broke. Right. For whatever reason, I decided to take it out of the bin, and I fixed the clock. Right. My mum kept that clock right until she left England. Okay. Right. Which was 2014. Yeah. The clock. The second thing was, if you remember back then, the electric lights had a most people had a light which is by the door, so they had to get out of bed to switch off the light.
Oh yes,
get back
yes.
in bed. Right, okay. Well, because my dad was an electrician, what he did was he wired a connection that came all the way down, like say, to the bed.
Yes.
So what you do is that you just flick the switch on it, and the light came on and the light goes off, right?
Fantastic.
Now that was great from Dad's perspective, not great from my perspective, okay? Right? Because I see Dad stretching that, and the actual switch, there was a cover. Mum knitted a cover for it, so you don't actually see the switch. So as a kid, I'm trying to figure out, well, how does that happen? Right? You stretch your hand out and you hold this thing, and the light goes on and the light goes off. What is that all about? So I was there looking after my sister, Jean, because she was born in 1963 as well. Okay, right. So what happened was that when they went to work, I took this thing apart. Right. So a mama had this thing with it, and you just pull a string, right, and it secured the actual switch mechanism. Okay.
All right. Okay.
So I disabled that bit there, right, found a switch mechanism, right, disconnected, well, not opened up the switch mechanism, right,
Wow.
and I'm playing with this thing, and I can see you push the switch one way, something flips over, right, you push the switch the other way, flips over, and I thought, well, maybe I can move that myself. That was my first electric shock.
Oh my God. I didn't even ask what mom and dad said about that. I didn't even ask because, you know.
And would you believe I never told them?
Oh, really?
I never told them. And I never told mom either.
Hey, maybe when they watch this, all will be revealed. So that's a very, very interesting bit of your childhood there. So you actually grew up and, you know, school happened and you left school, and then what?
School was great. I actually left school with O-levels, O-level in maths. I've always been good at maths, chess, etc. O-level, English wasn't great. Right, technical drawing and engineering, geography, CSE grade ones, all that kind of stuff. When I left, this was around the time that our paths crossed, you see, because there was a percentage of guys in the church that was joining the forces. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So Danny, Oliver, Garth, my compatriots, right, you know, they were planning to actually join the army. Andrew joined the army, right, and that's when it's around that time when I met you. Right.
Wow.
Right. Now on the TV they had these adverts about if you wanted the image was of young men working on cars and vehicles, like all that kind of stuff, right? And the strap line was, if you want to be a professional, join the army. So I wanted to join the army. I wanted to work on stuff like that, okay? Right? And being a young whippersnapper, never thought that army meant killing people, right? I thought it was just a case of fixing machinery, lights, all that kind of stuff.
All right.
Absolutely. Yes. Anyway, because when I was at school, I actually made a steam engine. Right.
You did what?
I made a steam engine. Right. So there was one model that was actually required for the exam, but I actually made a few other versions, like say with a different flywheel, piston, and the tank, right, and all that kind of stuff, right? You know, so I was always dabbling. Okay.
Yeah.
But I then ended up at a convention in Willesden. And that's where I met Reverend Kennedy. He was one. He was part of the original generation that came over. He was one that started Clapton Church. Okay.
Okay.
What was previously Stoke Newington, right? Which is now Clapton. He started this thing. Okay. Anyway, So somehow during the convention, I ended up in his office, and for the life, I ain't got a clue how comes I was there. Okay, and man asked me, what kind of profession, what do I want to do when I leave school? And I said, and I said, well, Dad's an electrician, and I'm interested in. Oh, it wasn't so much the electrician bit. Because of that advert, I said I wanted to join the army, same as Danny Oliver likes, etc. And the man said to me, have I considered a post office? And I thought, he hasn't heard me. I explained that I'm into electrics because I built my first radio when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
Right. Okay. In my junior school, right? You know, there was Russell. That's his first name. Can't remember his surname. Russell and I were into radios, all that kind of stuff, and we built a radio, minimal components, but able to actually tune into Radio Caroline or
Really?
Luxembourg lights and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I did, like at the age of 9. Right. So getting back to Kennedy. So Kennedy mentioned about the post office, and I thought he'd missed the mark, right? But giving him respect, I thought, well, at least I should do some research on it, because back then it was called the GPO, the General Post Office.
Okay? Yes.
And I'm wondering, what has post got to do with what I'm interested in, right? So I found in the back of the Evening Standard an advert, and I found, was it post office telecommunications, like, so whatever it was, there was a bit of a split, like, etc. Went for an interview and fortunately it was the Westminster district, because if I had applied for the City of London, I'd have fallen flat on my face. Okay. Right.
Okay.
So I joined as an apprentice, right? Didn't understand the metrics and what all of that meant. I just, yeah, the interview was to draw the circuitry, draw a circuit to ring a bell. I'm thinking, what's the big deal about that?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, because what you've done previously, you've done so much more than that, haven't you, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so I sailed through that, right, you know, and did the 3-year apprentice course, got up to 4th year City and Guilds, which is 1 year of a degree in telecommunications. I qualified to be a technical officer with a BT before I was 21.
Wow.
Right? Which was way ahead of schedule.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, so I just flew through the ranks, like I said, BT. There was a couple of incidents. One, Ian Vallance went to an Institute of Directors conference, and he was sitting with the boss of Shell. And when he introduced himself, you know, the boss of Shell said to him, oh, so you're the one responsible for my crackly lines. I got it in the neck. Like, as a result, I was looking after Shell, BP, Freeman's, Sainsbury's, yeah, it was those kind of big companies within the Westminster district under the exchange area that I was responsible for. I was responsible for it.
Wow.
So there's a wing of BT came down like a microscope and everything, you know, to verify, like, say, is there anything here? They found zero.
Really?
Absolute zero. Right. You know, and because I didn't drink as a Christian, like, you know, it was the early days where the managers used to take the staff to the pub at lunchtime.
Okay. Yes, 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 yes.
Those are the guys that got promoted quicker. Right.
Yes,
Board,
yes, it's called a social. Okay? Social mix is very important in certain people's life.
Yeah,
I know that.
But I wasn't particularly pleased about that. Anyway,
I understand that too.
Right. So hold on a sec.
Yes.
So what occurred was that I pulled a short straw. They had a rota in the telephone exchange. So for every like say 928 1000, like whatever, or 2129, whatever it was, 1112, whatever the New Scotland Yard number was, right? Wherever you saw the first 3 digits and the last 4 digits, that meant that there was effectively 20 individuals looking after the infrastructure that supported that. Okay,
Wow.
that's where I was, right? And you then rotated so that everyone kept up to speed with the technology and the learnings, right? So
Indeed.
because I was the youngest member of the staff, what they did was that when they saw me coming, they did no work. Because what they realized was that when I arrived around, I had to tidy it up. And if I didn't tidy it up, right, my performance thing, like I said, go down like, as a result. Anyway.
Right.
But I didn't take it personal, right? I just enjoyed the work anyway. So what occurred, and the reason why that bit mattered was that the boss that I was working for, like I said at the time, he was a confessed National Front member. Okay.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and so I was going to Brixton College of Further Education, which is where and there was another BT centre in a Brixton, which is where I got trained up, you see. Did the BT internal courses and did the external courses, like say, etc. Right. So this man arrived whilst I was at college. Okay. So when I came in from college, being introduced to him, I arrived. I used to wear a bubble hat at the time. You know,
Right.
what Marvin Gaye. Right,
yeah, yes.
Right,
Yes.
I was wearing one of those, right? And my hair was a lot longer than what it is now, like, you know, and I had the Guardian newspaper under my arm.
Really?
Right? So turned up, like, say, in the man's office, and he obviously saw, and he was expecting whatever he was expecting, but that wasn't me. Okay. Right. So it wasn't the Jamaican or the Caribbean accent that came out, and it was the Guardian that was under my arm. Not the Sun and not the Mirror. Okay.
It's like a contradictory statement, that was it, I suppose. You know.
Absolutely. Anyway, so he introduced himself and he said, well, look, you know that I'm member of the National Front, like, all that kind of stuff. So your chances are 0, like, a kind of idea.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's life, okay? No big deal. Right. So when Valence kicked off that query, right, there's another process within BT where they would randomly do an audit of the of a function, right? And when they do that, they rip everything up, right?
I get it.
So they'll do that for the worst performing unit, and they'll do it for the best performing, to try and get learnings, right? You know, to try and do the improvements, you know, to raise the bar. Okay. So up come Vauxhall Telephone. Anyway, right, you know, so it's the Vauxhall area that I was working in, right? I can't say anything more than that, right? Okay. Yeah. Right. So when they came, they looked at all the work that was done and the records over the years, like some of that kind of stuff. And it was a completely impartial, right, a kind of an assessment. And they interviewed all the people, like, so all that kind of stuff. And when they came to interview me, they noticed this pattern, that wherever I was going, the units always, the performance went up. Right. And when
so they actually noticed that.
Right. They saw all of that, right? Wow. And they asked me, well, how comes? What is it? What's going on? I said, no idea. I'm just here to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when the guys left, so the boss was rather concerned, because he knew what was likely to actually come out. Okay, what could actually come out. Okay. So what then occurred was that when the report came out for the unit, he called me into the office And he said to me, why didn't you shop me? Right. And I said, what's the point of that? Right. Because if I said that this is the reason why this is going, that's going to make life difficult for me. Right. So what's the point? Right. So anyway, so at that time, I've always been reasonably good, well, handy at table tennis. I've still got a table tennis table in the garage out there, like I say, etc. So I was the captain of the Westminster District table tennis team.
Oh,
okay, right.
wow.
And what occurred was that, there's a couple of things that occurred, like say, on that journey. Because I didn't shop the bloke, I then got promoted eventually, right, because I was doing fairly well at college, etc. And they put me in charge of Brixton Telephone Exchange.
Wow.
Okay. Right. So what occurred during that one was that the first riot in Brixton, I was in charge of one of the exchanges there. And what I used to do was, by that time, I'd moved up to, I bought a property in Braintree. So I came down. Braintree is leave London up to Stansted, turn right into A120 for another 13 or 15 miles. That's where I used to. That's where the house was. Okay. Drove down to London on Saturdays, right? Make sure that everybody arrived on time. Started work, right? And by that time, once I'm happy that a lot of work's been done, so I knew that quite a few of them would leave as soon as I left, okay? Right? So I made it all the way back to Braintree, switched on the TV, and I saw the riot. I thought it was Los Angeles again, right? And when I say Brixton, I'm gonna be Brixton. I was watching down in Brixton. Anyway, the telephone exchange is about 400 yards or so from the police station, right? So the riot, right? The guys in the telephone exchange couldn't get out.
No, really?
Right, yeah, right. So had to manage all of those kind of issues, right? And it was absolute havoc anyway, right? So there was those are kind of experiences, but getting back to Ray Jenkins. Ray Jenkins was the manager, right, and the assistant executive engineer, right. First line of management, like NBT, coming all the way back. So what then occurred was that he was also a table tennis player, right?
Okay.
So what occurred was that he then joined the table tennis team, and we were best of mates. Right, talk about I'm the captain of the team. We then eventually won the civil service. We won the civil service trophy for the first time in absolute years.
Right.
Right? And would you believe that the executive engineer, the news that we'd actually won the civil service trophy went all the way up, and there used to be a Westminster magazine, so photographers came down, took photos of the team, like,
really?
Yeah, man. And they invited us up, to the general manager's office. Right, like,
Wow.
so we're up there, and one of the executive engineer who's responsible for all the AEs, like, so that kind of stuff, all the level 1 managers, took me into his office. Had a chat with me, like, what is it that you're interested in, like, etc. And I said, yeah, but asked what kind of paper I read, talking about the Guardian. I also read the Times every now and then, the FT. And he said, what am I doing on the technical side? I said, well, I'm up to 4th year City and Guilds. And he said, yeah, you don't need anything more than that. Right? What do you know about business? And I said, yeah, just from the FT, I keep tabs of stocks and shares and all that kind of odds and ends. And it said to me, tell you what, we'll sponsor you on an 8th in business studies. so that you can have a balanced approach, like, you know, that kind of stuff. So they paid for me to actually go up to Chelmsford, right, to actually kick off, like, say, their business studies, right? So that started to actually progress. At the same time, that's when I then got promoted to the first, to a manager in OBT, right?
Wow.
I had this tough call, right? You know, that yes, I like to finish off the academic space or do some development there, right? Or well, why would I sweat on that when what I'm actually after is a promotion in the first place, and the promotion's here, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the promotion went well. Gosh, it was, I moved out of the electromechanical engineering space into the electrical. The manager actually introduced me to one of the first generations. Oh my word, you stirred a few items, right? Because gosh, I spent some time at the embassies. Okay.
At the embassy.
Yeah. I've worked in some interesting places, right? So there was a siege. There's a siege in London around Sloane Square. Oh gosh, heavens! Yeah, it was something that was. I was just around the corner when all of those things kicked off. Right.
Yes, I remember some sort of scene that was on the news, on TV, and all of that.
Yeah, heavens, right. And
you were around the corner from that?
I can't say anything more. Right, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, right. Anyway, right. So I then got promoted into the The reason why I was going back to the EE is because he demonstrated all the phones at the time was a rotary dial, right?
Okay.
And
yes.
the first generation of the trim phone had only just come out.
Right.
So I was trained in all of that kind of stuff, right? You know, look, every wire in the telephone exchange, every wire in the infrastructure, I'm trained on.
Wow.
Okay. Right.
Wow.
You know, right down to the batteries. The batteries are lifelong batteries, right?
Wow.
The lead acid batteries. Each battery was about 4 feet high, and typically a minimum of 3 foot wide, and they only generated 2 volts.
What?
Okay, there was 40. There was there was 20. Yeah, there was 20 odd of them. There's 2 sets of 20 odd of these units, right? Then behind it was a generator, right?
Wow.
3-phase generator, right? So that there was under no circumstances that the thing outage did not exist.
Wow.
We couldn't care. I mean, if the grid went down, there was no way there was going to be an interruption in communication.
Right,
okay?
right.
That was the infrastructure. So I was trained in all of that. Okay. So he demonstrated, going back to the EE, we're moving from the rotary dial. The trim phone was still sending out pulses, exactly the same as the rotary dial. Okay.
Right.
So he showed me this new phone. I've still got it. I've still got this phone, and it had a green LED. And he demonstrated that when you dialed, when you took your finger off the pulse, ringing tone came straight away.
Okay.
That circuit was from London to Russia and back.
Amazing.
It was a 2 megahertz, 2 meg. It was definitely 2 meg, which would be, it was a 2 meg signaling system going from UK straight to Russia and back, right? And the calls intersect, blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. Anyway, right, all the processing and everything. Anyway, enough of that. So when I got promoted, it was into the electronics, the System X exchanges. that was due to be rolled out. And I was one of the last guys in. And an option came for the introduction because of competitive tendering. The UK had to introduce 2 systems in terms of reliability, right? You know, so Ericsson's won that deal, right?
Okay.
And the network should have been it should have been like, say, 90% System X and 10% what was called System Y at the time, which was the XE10. Okay, so I pulled the short straw. Well, I wasn't too sure anyway. And I was initially trained on System X, then I was trained on the XE10. The XE10 was what catapulted my life. Okay,
really?
Right? Yeah, because well, it was quite a bizarre time because I knew the telephone exchange, every switch, every relay, right, from the battery, from the 3-phase power coming in, like, say, etc., right, and also for the microwave and parabolic, anyway, right, okay. So when I was trained on the XE10, the issue was they were trying to convert analog information into digital. Right?
Okay.
I had a brief spell with Crossbar, which was the in-between, right?
Okay.
Anyway, so I've been through Strata was from 18 something to the other, right? Was when the first Strata exchange came out. I was trained on that, basically on everything right up to the current stuff, which is IP, right, all those kind of stuff. Anyway, so what occurred was that first, all the training that BT offered, like, say, X, and I should have gone over to Sweden, but I missed it by a month or 2. Okay, right. So I'm trained up on this thing, and the first job was one that must not fail. Is either the first or the second, right? But there was something just slightly bizarre about the actual journey, because we did the first exchange. It was 40 to 50,000 lines of man-machine language code, right? Every single line of code, okay? Right, so the brain was going to sleep, right? Because I can see the data, the real world item, and they're trying.
You're right? Burnt it out.
Yeah. I'm not too sure if those kind of stuff is supposed to be in the public domain. Anyway, so I'll finish that bit off. Right. So elements of it like then make a lot more sense. Okay. So they trained me on DBase 3, DBase 4, right? You know, and Linux. It's not called Linux. It wasn't called Linux. It's prior to Linux, like, so whatever that was. Anyway, so I had an idea of what the data was supposed to be doing, but I couldn't understand why they were trying to translate it in that kind of manner. Okay, but we were following the manufacturer's guide. Okay, so what happened was that the first digital exchange took 9 months. 9 months of typing, right, reading and translating information, and my brain, part of it was just falling asleep. Right?
9 months.
9 months. Excuse me. Anyway, so when I finished, I went to my boss. Name was Dave Conniff. Great bloke. He was the one responsible for my name being changed from Alfred to Alf.
Really?
Right. Yeah. Anyway, right. You know, so I said to him, look, the way that they're putting the data together, right, there has to be a quicker way, because I knew how the data in the analog exchange was actually stored, whether it's paper or anything like that, right? But you can type elements of that data into a Word document, and potentially import that into these line of code. Because some of the code, right, you know, for the systems or the routes, all that kind of stuff, that particular function block, right, needed just minor tweaks, but you had to type or cut and paste each. Anyway, right. That's why my brain was saying, well, why am I doing all of this when it's only that bit like says changing, and you could maybe that can anyway. So they sent me up to telecommunication headquarters, right? So I was working at the London headquarters, Camelford House, and they sent me up to the telecommunication headquarters for the whole of the UK.
Mm.
And I said to the bloke that if you remember a program called Columbus.
Okay. Yes.
Remember Columbus?
Yeah.
I turned up. This bloke was like Columbus. Right, you know, and when I came into the place, Dave Newbold, gosh, all the names are coming back, right? You know, he said, well, as long as you buy this guy a Mars bar, everything's okay.
Okay.
Right, so I bought this guy a Mars bar, and I said to him that this is what I wanted to do. And he said, come back tomorrow. Right, explain it to him, and he said, come back tomorrow.
All right, okay.
When I arrived tomorrow, he'd done it.
No. No.
The bloke had done it. And he said to me, what else do you want to do?
Oh my God.
Right? So what happened was that we were able to actually reduce the time taken to do that process from 9 months down to a maximum of 3. Right, maximum of 3.
So,
right?
question.
Hold on a sec. We then reduced it, so we were able to do some of the standard bit, and that reduced it by down to 3 months. Then, because we're able to then import in, like, say, the customer data elements of the customer data, we're able to actually reduce it down to about 8 weeks. Right?
Wow.
Right? So we were producing the data quicker than what Ericsson can actually manufacture. So instead of the AXE10 only taking up 10% of the UK infrastructure, it ended up taking up something like 30%, right? But on top of that, right, the last bit on that journey. So they had the largest, a bit of history on this one. What BT used to do previously was that when they were moving, taking a step change in the technology change, right? They used to notify the press and stuff like that. Senior managers come down, right, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was part of the crossover where they had the electronic exchange. So this is slightly before the digital thing, which I was talking about. Okay. But you'll understand why the significance, right, is that. Waterloo 928 was the busiest telephone exchange in the whole of Europe.
Right.
Right. The amount of calls going through one particular unit.
Right. Okay.
In the whole of Europe. Okay. So what they did was that they had these, they were going from the analog stuff into the electronic, right? And they had tried all of these electronic solutions. They'd seeded it. They tried it in Birmingham. They tried it in Manchester, in the villages, right? And the largest unit that they had was a TXE4, right? And because it was a successful, they decided to try it in London. And if you're going to try it in London, and you know that it works out there, let's try it in the biggest and the baddest. Okay, right. So the press was there, the managers, like I said, and everything was done to the T. Right, 9 o'clock in the morning, they're doing a changeover. Photographers and they did the switch over. It went bang.
No, really?
It went
And all
bang.
the press and
Forget
everyone
about
was
what you
there.
hear like say the press, it went bang. Right? Anyway, so they as a result, learning their lessons from that one, no major change in the infrastructure is ever publicized. Okay? Hold on a sec. So they then decided that because the positive thing about the XC10 was that, and Ericsson's, is that they're a manufacturer that underspecify and over-deliver.
Okay.
Unlike the Americans, pardon me, and I know that this may be recorded, but you must be careful. Okay.
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So because BT had in Martlesham, which is now a Destrel Park, right? You know, the area where they could replicate every communication system. I think we probably had best to have another recorded that is not.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. So what then occurred was that they decided the unit is in it's South London, and it was one of the worst performing units in the whole of the UK. So what they decided, that same audit process I told you about was still active in the business. Okay.
Right.
So they used that to then jump the queue in the modernization program, right? And so you're going from, like, say, analog to digital, and where the exchanges are performing worse, bring those ahead of the queue so that the user experience and the UK experience, like, say, is
Okay.
Right. Northolt, no, it wasn't Northolt. The name will come back on it, but the information really doesn't matter. It's just a unit down in South London, right? So they decided make that one XC10. Okay, it's actually the largest digital exchange in the country, and I put that one together, right?
Really?
But the thing that got me, I built all the data, right? So the thing that got me was that the very week that the exchange was due to go live, the analog unit was the best performing unit in the whole of the country.
Really?
Right? And it's just one of those time and place things where the guys were just, and the team, doing the very best that they can.
Yes.
Okay. But sometimes that there are circumstances in life completely out of your control.
Yes.
You're in the wrong place at that particular time.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
They've worked their socks off, right? And it's the best performing analog unit in the whole of the country. We pulled the plug on it.
You did what?
Pulled the plug, switched it off.
Why?
Because that's the same week that the AXE10 was up, ready to go. The very week that they performed miracles in the analog environment, we switched it off.
Listen, let me say, your storyline is got to be segmented in terms of episodes, because your lifespan is amazing, right? So we're gonna call this episode 1, right? And the main reason for that is that, you know, I plan.
I tell you what, shall I finish the BT first, right? Because that was just the stepping stone. Okay.
Yes.
So
and we call it episode 1 because this is a segment that I have to chop within the next few minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can, because okay, carry on.
Right. So I'll leave the last BT item. Well, actually, can't be the last because a lot of things happen, like I said, BT. One, I was responsible for putting together the data for the second largest contact center community in the whole of the world.
Really?
That's what BT put together, right? It was over 10,000 agents on the system. I was the data design authority for it, right?
Wow.
Right, and it went right down to the T. Okay, I also left BT as their call center product development manager, so my customer base was members of the 500 club, right?
Wow.
I brought a new product to the marketplace that made them. Sky bought £2 million worth of it. The sales team knew nothing
No.
about it. I did all the training material. I did all the service material. I did the presentation to Sky. Right?
Wow.
Right. The sales guys were given. They sent the sales guys and their families to Monaco for a week. Right. I got a weekend at the Grosvenor Hotel in Green Park with Ruth, right, my wife, right, you know,
Okay.
and it was it £350 a night, right, you know, and that's all that I got. Well, yeah, I think I got a there may have been a token, was it maximum something, but that £2,000 bonus, like, so whatever it was, right? But to be able to spend a week with your family in Monaco, every single one of the sales team got that, right? And yeah, you know, so there was some kind of yeah. Anyway, so even when I left BT, I tried to yeah, leaving BT was also interesting because there was a component there where because I knew the systems, I'd moved into the process and system space, not so much getting involved like so the technicalities like Ground, although they resurrected me right when there was a couple of issues, right, you know, anyway, yeah, it's around the same time that I met Ruth, because I had 3 months worth of leave I had to take. Anyway, a short while prior to that was I was responsible for the national repair process for the corporate space, and I walked the job and found that and BT rolling like clappers, you know, they were bringing out products like, you know, every month. The people on the front line being trained on it, and for me, I couldn't figure out, well, look, if you're trained on one new thing every month and you don't get any involvement on those items, 6 months down the road when a fault comes up, the likelihood that you can actually add any value to that is very slim.
Yes, I get it. Listen,
right?
Can we conclude within a minute or so on this one, please? Because that's quite important.
Okay. Right? So I'll start off the next lot with that reactive. There's a 3-phase: proactive and predictive. Okay, because it was out of that meeting, me walking and finding that there's no way that the people on the ground can effectively support the business. Why the reactive and the predictive component of the solutions started taking place. Last presentation was in 1997. So when they talk about artificial intelligence, I caused havoc because they had to invent something called a robotic ID, right?
Wow, listen,
anyway. Okay.
End of episode 1. This is fantastic, right? This, as a part of the forgotten generations, I'm gonna have to say thank you so much for this, because this is fantastic to see and learn somebody that, you know, our path crossed however and whenever ago, how our lives change differently in different directions, right? And this is what I would want to record and tell people what we have done in life. Very, very important. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to call this episode 1 and cut it here now because of other engagements I've got. Yeah. But shall we convene another day, another time?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I got to say massive thank you. It was an education. All right.
God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, till the next time.